Hey, thanks for clicking on this video. Please continue watching, but just a pre-warning, there is blood, gore, death, magic, contradictions between the parts, but otherwise, if you're okay with all that, please continue watching, please enjoy, and I'll see you at the end of the video.
Horror in the West Part 1 by Sam. Read by John Anthony.
"Tell us a story, Dad,"
exclaimed Xavier.
"Yes, please, Mr. Shadow,"
added the rest of the kids. Okay, William Shadow calmly assured as all the children listened intently. It was a hot July day in the year 1870, the day before the accident, which was Thursday, July 23rd. Nobody expected anything out of the ordinary to happen. We start our story with Harvey Jones, a kind young man and somewhat of a town celebrity. Today, Harvey Jones is wearing the same outfit as he always wore, his white cowboy hat with a tan button-up shirt, with brown chaps over black cowboy pants, his black boots with spurs, brown vest, and his red bandana. Today was one of the days he had work in the afternoon. Harvey spent most of the morning running errands and dealing with personal daily actions. Harvey was walking down the street like he always did, saying hello to everyone he saw, and if anything came up, he would help anybody who asked. Harvey went over to Sheriff Bill Shadows.
"Dad, that's our last name,"
interrupted Xavier. William chuckled. Yes, it is. He was your great-great-great-grandfather.
"Cool,"
exclaimed Xavier. Yes, very cool. But let's get back to the story, answered William. Harvey went over to Sheriff Shadow's house to ask if anything was going on that he could help with. The sheriff answered Harvey, "No, we don't have anything going on right now, Harv." Harvey replied, "Okay, have a good day then." He said this very gloomily because he was hoping he could help with something today. After his checkup with the sheriff, he had left to go check up on his horse, who was a massive, beautiful white horse named Skeleton. He took care of Skeleton and took him on a daily exercise by riding him around. By now it was lunchtime, so he had got food and went on to work. He had been working in the mines for 2 years. He worked by hauling the gold and anything else that was found in the mines. He used 2 Conestoga freighters that he transformed into ore work wagons. During this job, he always kept his knife and gun on him, because this was an extremely dangerous job. Harvey and the others were paid $2.50.
"Dad, that isn't much money. Why were they paid so little?"
interrupted Xavier. Xavier, $2.50 was a lot more back then. It would be worth $55 now, explained William.
"Oh,
that makes a lot more sense," exclaimed Xavier. William chuckled. Let's get back to the story, okay? That day, the sheriff and the deputy were with Harvey, helping him transfer the gold. The miners had an amazing day that day. They found a lot of excellent quality gold ore. They found so much ore that day that they got in an argument with John Austin, who was the town and mine owner, nicknamed J.A., and Harvey about getting a raise since they found so much. The argument ended with nobody getting a raise, but instead all the miners went away angry. 3 of them, who were especially furious, swore that they'd get Harvey for betraying them. Harvey ignored them and went on to do his job. He finished rather quickly that day because the sheriff was with him. No robbers dared to attack. Sheriff Bill Shadow was one of the best sheriffs around, and he had been the sheriff of the town for over 30 years. He was rough, tough, and old, but just as kind. Arlo Austin, the deputy, was no different. Even though he had only been there for 5 months and was the son of the town owner, he was a little bit timid and shy, but kind and gentle. After Harvey finished his job, he went home for the night. He walked through his large house as he passed his favorite pistols, which he kept on the wall mount. He passed his sword that he got from his father, and passed his bookshelf, but stopped to look at the book that he got from his father. It was an old leather Native American book about spells. It was mostly in language that he didn't understand. One part that had pencil written underneath the characters was translated into English. It was a spell to make him live longer by putting his soul in a vessel after he died. He thought it looked fun, so he tried it. He took out his pocket watch and performed the ritual, then went to his room and went to sleep. Harvey woke up the next day feeling good as new. He had to work earlier than yesterday. After eating, he made it to the mines around 8 o'clock. He started collecting the gold, but as soon as he had finished, he heard a gunshot from behind him. He was panicking for a little bit, thinking he was shot. After collecting himself, he realized that there was a creaking coming from the mines, and as soon as he knew it, the mines were nothing but rubble. Bill, Arlo, J.A., and some other townsfolk all rushed to the mines because of the loud noise. At first, there was some panic and confusion, but eventually, people calmed down and realized that there were 3 people in the mines. It wasn't very hard to find him. They were pretty close to the front of the caves. It seemed as if they were running to try to get out of the cave when they were hit. Not a single one of them was alive. The sheriff and deputies started investigating, and they found the support pillars had bullet holes in them. They put the pillars back together so that they could figure out where the bullets were shot from. The bullets were deep enough so it could be pretty accurate. They followed the bullets were shot from and figured out that they were shot from directly where Harvey Jones was standing, for he had not moved because of his shock. And to make matters worse, 3 people were killed inside were the 3 who were mad at him and threatened him the other day. There was much other evidence pointing to Harvey as the number 1 suspect. The sheriff confronted Harvey about all the evidence, saying, "Harv, there ain't nothing I can do about this. People are finding a lot of evidence pointing right at you. Plus, you're one of the only people who could make a shot from that far. You know, I'm even starting to be convinced that, Harv, you are even gonna talk. This is starting to look real bad for you." Harvey replied, "Yeah, I know. I don't think that saying anything would help right now. I didn't do it, but everyone believes that I did, and there's no use trying to change their mind." He said this while remembering the spell he cast last night, thinking everything would be fine and nothing would go wrong, because if it did, he would just turn into a ghost. Sheriff Bill put handcuffs on him and took him to the town jail, only to be there for a little while. Townspeople were angry at the deaths of the 3 people and demanded that he be hanged tonight. In response, the sheriff submitted to their wishes and set up the gallows.
Dad, what's a gallows?
Interrupted Xavier. "A gallows is a wooden device used for hanging," answered William.
Cool.
Exclaimed Xavier. "Back to the story," said William. And so Harvey was hanged. He could hear the crowds. He stood in the gallows waiting. Then the floor dropped, with the rope around his neck. He couldn't breathe, but he didn't struggle. He saw the crowds. They faded into darkness. There was nothing. He was all alone. Suddenly, he heard the crowds again, but couldn't see. Slowly his vision came to him. He was in his closet, which was where his watch was. He left it in the pocket of the shirt he wore yesterday. It was dark and he was sad. No longer would his life be normal. He was a ghost, alone, innocent, all alone.
Is that it?
Xavier asked. "Yes, and it is sad that Harvey Jones still lives like a ghost in his house even today," answered William mysteriously. "But on a serious note, don't go up in that house. It's old and dangerous. Maybe when you're older you can go up there, but not until you're 16. Horror in the West, Part 2. Written and read by John Anthony. It was almost 149 years since Harvey Jones was convicted of murder by Bill Shadow in the year 1870 in the town of Vagrandaville. Vagrandaville is located in Western America. It was a small town, the type where everybody knows everybody. There was a 12th grade boy who loved the heritage of this town and desired to learn all of its history, because it wasn't just the town's heritage, it was his heritage too. The boy's great-great-grandfather was there at the beginning of the town. This boy's name was Xavier. Xavier was a tall, muscular boy who was very attractive. He had dark brown hair and blue eyes. He was very athletic, bold, and brave. He did not want people to find out his last name was Shadow. He put on a red, short-sleeved polo, jeans, and black and white athletic shoes. He grabbed his analog watch and put it on his left wrist, then biked to school. When he arrived at school, all the students cheered because he was there. He was the most popular kid in school, but he didn't want to be. He was thinking of a way to get away from the crowd. At the back of the crowd, there was an 11th grade girl named Anne Murray. She was about a foot shorter than Xavier. She had short blonde hair, brown eyes, and was wearing a black sweatsuit and black and white athletic shoes. She was bold and semi-popular. She loved Xavier, but because Xavier was trying to get away from the crowds, he didn't notice her. Then Rachel Donegan bumped into Anne. Rachel said to Anne,
Watch it, loser.
Rachel was a rude, self-centered 11th grade girl that was cowardly. She was the second prettiest girl in school, but she was only as smart as a 7th grader. She was wearing a light red shirt, jean shorts, black high heels, and was wearing a lot of makeup. She wore her dark brown hair in a ponytail, and her green eyes sparkled like emeralds. She was 3 inches taller than Anne in her black high heels. As she walked down the hall, she tripped over Logan Hoover. Logan Hoover was a short, unpopular, nerdy, timid 10th grade age boy who was in the 11th grade. He had circular, taped-together glasses, a gap in his teeth, orange-red Harry Potter-type hair, a white button-up shirt, and a light and dark blue diamond pattern long-sleeve sweater with light blue sleeves, khaki shorts, and long white socks and athletic sandals. By the time Xavier got to class, it was over. Miss Huckleberry said in a stern tone,
Xavier,
Xavier interrupted her. Yes, Miss Huckleberry?
you're late.
She exclaimed. Miss Huckleberry was an irritated middle-aged woman who always had her dark black hair in a flicked-up bob. She was super tall. She wore the same outfit every day, a dark purple woolly long-sleeve sweater and a black skirt that nearly covered her feet, black leggings, and black heels, and always had the same sour look on her face.
Do you have your history assignment done?
She asked. Wait, we had a history assignment? Xavier replied.
Yes, your history assignment for a history class in the 11th and 12th graders is a 7-page paper on Harvey Jones. It was assigned 5 weeks ago and is due by Monday. Today is Friday, she told him. She wasn't very good at telling people what was assigned for homework. Nobody knew that there was a history assignment assigned 5 weeks ago. After school, Xavier rushed home from school and completed all his homework except for the paper. He biked to Harvey Jones's house, which was at the edge of town. Harvey Jones's house looked creepy. It was completely symmetrical. There was a garden-type hedge wall around it. Some spots of hedge looked brown and dead. The house was huge, probably 300 feet long by 300 feet wide by 300 feet high. It looked moldy and run down, but Xavier thought he could get some information for his paper. As he stepped through the gate, he heard someone shout, Hey, what are you doing here?
It was Rachel. She was hiding behind a bush. She looked scared. She came out from the bush towards Xavier. It was almost 6 p.m. Xavier answered her. School? What are you doing here?
Same. I thought I would graffiti it and walk back home. Oh, and by the way, did you bring anything with 2 seats? Because my friends dropped me off and were too scared to go in, so they left me.
Xavier answered. Some friends. Also, I'm sorry, I only have a 1-seater bike.
Aw, crap,
Rachel said to herself. Then another voice said,
Hey, Anne, Xavier and Rachel are here.
It was Logan. It looked like Logan rode with Anne, and Anne drove her dad's 1998 Ford 2-seater pickup truck that was bright blue. Anne told Xavier and Rachel, I told Logan where I was going from school for the assignment, and he wanted to come with me. So we all came here for the same reason? Asked Xavier.
I guess so, answered Anne.
Then all of a sudden it started hailing. The hail was the size of a ping-pong ball. Logan called out,
I think we should head inside.
So they went inside.
Can't see a thing,
Rachel complained. Xavier grabbed 4 flashlights out of his bag and handed one to everyone.
Thanks,
Anne said. They showed their lights on the staircase. The staircase went up 3 floors, and even though it was 4 floors, and it split left and right at the top and above where it was 2 Civil War cavalry sabers and a pair of pistols. They all went up the left side of the stairs. When they got up the stairs, there were stairs to the 4th floor, but they went into the room nearest to them. And that room was not much. There was a bed and dressers and windows on either side of the bed, and on the opposite side of the wall for the main staircase was a portrait of Harvey Jones. Then suddenly, hail crashed down right in the doorway in the room, which blocked the only way to the right side of the house other than somewhere on the 4th floor to get to the right side of the house. Then more hail crashed down the entrance of the staircase, and they came up the left side. We should probably find a way out, Xavier exclaimed.
No, duh,
Rachel complained. Rachel pulled out some spray paint and was about to spray paint the portrait of Harvey Jones when Xavier snatched the spray paint and put it in his bag and shouted at Rachel, No! They all left the room and headed up to the 4th floor. That is, all but Logan. He wanted to examine the painting more. He thought he saw the eyes move. Then he heard something, so he turned around and back towards the painting, then felt a stabbing pain in his back. He screamed in anguish. He looked down. He saw a shiny metal thing coming out of his belly. Then he realized it was one of the sabers from the other side of the wall. The saber went through his spine, downwards through his organs between his spine and his stomach, and finally out his stomach. He knew he was going to die. Then he felt queasy. He threw up. The puke was a mixture of blood and digested food. He also felt tired. He slowly lowered his head and his eyelids. Everything was black. Logan was dead. Xavier, Anne, and Rachel all heard it. Anne made Rachel check it out. Rachel came down and found Logan's lifeless body dangling by one of the sabers that stabbed him. She saw blood run down the blade on the floor, and it made an unpleasant noise. Drip, 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 drip. Then she saw it, a menacing thing standing there. Logan's body hit the floor. Rachel screamed. She ran up the stairs. Xavier and Anne saw her running. They were about to run too, but hail crashed down in front of them and made a hole way down to the ground floor. Xavier and Anne inched their way around the hole. They heard a gunshot fire. It hit Rachel in her right shoulder. Blood was gushing from her shoulder. Rachel was crying. She had almost made it to Xavier and Anne, but she didn't see the hole. When she did, she stopped, then tripped over her heels, fell in the hole. Her stomach was punctured by a piece of wood on the 4th floor. She hit her back of her neck on the 3rd floor. Her throat was cut on the 2nd floor. Rachel finally hit the 1st floor, which had spikes below the wood flooring, into a pile of hail. The hail was hard and sharp. It turned red with Rachel's blood. Her eyelids were shut. Her eyelids were salty because of how much she had been crying. Rachel was dead. Xavier and Anne dashed to the other side of the 4th floor, dodging bookshelves, bullets, and blades. They ran down the stairs. Xavier threw the paint can in rage. The paint can hit the shelf above the front door. A pocket watch and journal fell. Xavier didn't notice, but Anne did. Anne grabbed them both out of the way. Outside, the hail stopped. The moon was red. Xavier threw his bicycle into the back of the truck. Xavier and Anne both quickly got in the truck. Anne tried to start the engine. It didn't work. The ghoul stepped into the moonlight. Xavier and Anne both realized it was the ghost of the Harvey Jones. Harvey Jones slowly inched closer to them. Anne tried to start the engine again. Nothing. Harvey Jones was halfway there. Anne tried a 3rd time. Nothing. Harvey was at the gate. It took Anne 4 more tries to start the engine. By the time the engine started, Harvey was reaching out to grab them. Anne floored the gas pedal, and Xavier and Anne had escaped. Xavier drove towards his house, Anne sitting shotgun. Xavier looked behind him and thought he could hear the demented screams and laughs of the poltergeist that dwelled in the maze of horrors sitting innocently on the hillside. Tears streaming from her cheeks, Anne shivered next to him, fear in her eyes. When they reached Xavier's house, he and Anne ran straight to his parents' room. "Mom! Dad! Wake up! We were just at the old haunted house, and the ghost killed Rachel and Logan!" Xavier screamed as they barged into the room. Xavier's parents scrambled out of the sheets, groggy and disoriented. "Go back to bed, Xavier. It was just a bad dream," his dad mumbled. "No, it wasn't. We were just there. Anne saw it too." "Anne?" Xavier's mom asked, shaking her head. "Anne, what are you doing here?"
"That doesn't matter right now, Mrs. Shadow. We were just at the haunted house on the hill, and Logan and Rachel were murdered by the ghost. He said he was Harvey Jones, and he had finally found his nemesis. He killed Logan with a floating saber, and he killed Rachel by shooting her in his shoulder, making her fall into a hole. You need to call the police or FBI immediately."
A dark shadow passed briefly over Xavier's dad's face, but it was so quick Xavier thought he imagined it. "You two have been smoking something you're not supposed to, haven't you?" his dad said. "Xavier, I told you Anne was a bad influence on you. Now you go straight to bed. If I hear one more word about this, you're going to be locked in a room for a week with only bread and water. You hear? But not another word. Anne, you go straight home, and you won't want to tell anyone else about this incident. Now, would you? I have a gun, by the way." Anne paled and swallowed.
"Of course not, Mr. Shadow."
"Good. Now get out of here and go back to your bed." Xavier watched as Anne scampered out of the room. "Xavier, go back to your room. You're not coming out for a long, long time." Xavier lay in his room, shaking. He tried to forget what happened that night, tried to go to sleep, but he couldn't. His brain kept replaying over and over and over the gruesome scene of the deaths of his 2 best friends. He remembered the research project, how they snuck up to the big hill, slipped inside the window, how they found the painting of a man and spray-painted it. Such a mistake. Such a terrible, terrible mistake. He remembered how the Civil War saver stabbed through the wall and ran through Logan before he could react. His friend getting his back skewered like a kebab, blood spilling everywhere, on the floor, on himself. He remembered Logan's body, slumped, split into 2 halves through his skull, lying in a puddle. No, a lake of blood. He remembered how they had to run. There was a pit ahead of them.
They rounded the corner, but they saw an old flintlock pistol that had floated off the display and fired a shot into Rachel's shoulder that caused her to trip on her heel and sent her tumbling down 4 stories into a pit of sharp, unwavering metal spikes. Xavier remembered the form of her broken body impaled on the spikes, her intestines snagged on some of them. He remembered running back where he tripped and smashed into the wall, dislodging from behind a display a journal and a pocket watch. He grabbed both and ran for his life. The house was a maze of fear, so many death traps. Xavier and Anne had almost died, but by some strange luck, fate had kept them both unscathed, thus causing their parents' disbelief. Tossing and turning in his bed, Xavier at last slipped into a fitful, uneasy sleep. Xavier opened his eyes. He sat up and rubbed them, stretched, and got out of bed. He went to open the door, but it was locked. My dad must have locked it last night after... The events of the night before crashed into him like a tidal wave, and he staggered back, overwhelmed in a wave of vertigo. The loss of his 2 best friends finally sinking in, he gasped, shivered, and fell on his knees, folding backwards. He felt like an elephant of grief, despair, and depression was sitting on his chest. He managed to choke out a sob, then a wail, a long, tortured, demented scream that leaked out of his mouth from somewhere deep inside his soul. Then it felt as if all the stops were pulled out, and he started sobbing. Not bothering to keep down the noise this time, he poured out all his sadness, the weight of the loss like a never-ending pile of fuel, giving him the energy to keep living 1 second at a time. He might have cried for 10 hours or 10 minutes, there was no way of knowing. When he came to the end, he suddenly stopped and stared at the ceiling in silence with tears marks standing out on his cheeks like a rash. My best friends died, he said to himself. There's nothing we can do about it, except... He thought for a minute. Suddenly, resolve hardened his features. He got up and took a phone out of his pocket. He speed-dialed Anne and waited with the toned features until she answered. Yes? She said in a shaky voice. It sounded like she had just been crying. Hey, Anne. Xavier softened his voice a little bit. I know it's terrible that Logan and Rachel died, and we have to accept that fact, but we won't move on until we settle this. What are we going to do? What's your plan? Anne asked firmly. Xavier spoke, and when he did, his voice was sharp and rigid with anger. We're going to go back to that house and teach the ghost a lesson. Xavier was sitting on his bed with a scowl on his face when he heard the doorknob rattling. It made a sound like a key turning, and then the handle turned, and the door opened. In walked Xavier's dad. He sat down at the edge of the bed and said, Son, what you did was wrong. I'm very disappointed in you. I thought I taught you better. I have communicated to you that drugs are bad, and you should never be within 10 feet of them. Why did you run off like that in the middle of the night and let that girl persuade you to directly disregard my instructions? I thought you were better than this. I promise to you, I did not take drugs, Xavier stated calmly. I told you the truth last night. I thought you knew me better than to immediately think I was lying or crazy. Haven't you considered that I was actually telling the truth? His dad hesitated for a second. You, young man, were not given permission to speak. You are going to go to school. When you come back, you're going to stay in your room until tomorrow. I'll bring you dinner. Now go. Xavier met Anne at his locker when he arrived at school. She was tense and pale, waiting for him. What did your dad say? She asked. He said nothing in particular. I couldn't convince him that I was telling the truth, though. What are you going to do? I'm going to read that journal and see what I find. Harvey Jones didn't seem too happy with me finding it. I want to tell someone about this really bad, Anne said. Do you think your dad will actually follow through with the threat? I'm absolutely sure he will. He hates you with a passion now. The next time he sees you, he'll blow your brains out. We have to prove to him the ghost is real. We need to start gathering proof right away. Annie, stop right there. Xavier's dad towered above everyone in the hallway. Everyone stopped and stared. Xavier froze. His dad? Here at school? He must have been followed to make sure he wouldn't get in trouble. His dad started making his way over, face red with anger, hands on the gun in his pocket. I have a good idea, Xavier said. Run! They sprinted down the hall in the opposite direction, glancing over their shoulders fearfully. Xavier's dad, furious, roared and started shoving kids out of the way in an effort to reach them. Following the nearest exit signs, they burst out of the school. They ran into the town as fast as they could and stopped in an alley between the barber shop and a restaurant. Panting for breath, Anne asked, "Where do we go now?" "I brought the book and watch with us," said Xavier, reaching into his backpack and pulling them out. "I had a feeling that my dad was going to come after us. We could go to the library and read it."
That's a good idea. We could hide in one of the back corners where the tables are.
"Then let's go." When they sat at the table, Xavier opened the journal and started reading. July 24th, 1870. I, Harvey Jones, right under house arrest. Today, under a building, collapsed and killed 2 people. They found the some bullet holes in a crucial pillar, and their friends blamed me for it. I denied, but they kept insisting and talking about their boss. But they wouldn't say who it was. These guys could be a big problem. They said if I don't confess, then they're gonna call the sheriff. They got some real looking evidence too. I don't know where they got it because I'm completely innocent. I didn't kill Soul. Sheriff arrived on the scene and arrested me. Shadow, he said his name was. Xavier looked up. "That's my last name."
That's so strange, Anne said. Maybe he's your ancestor or something.
Probably. Grandeville is a small town. There haven't been many new people in this town for the past couple generations. Who knows? Xavier continued reading. This looks like it could be bad news for me. They're talking about hanging me for it. They're here for me. Bill Shadow and his other policemen. I can see them walking up the drive to hang me. This is the end of the road for me. At least I completed the procedure last night, so I have nothing to fear. I'm gonna hide this journal in the watch someplace safe so they don't find it. I won't have time to hide this book. So I'm just gonna put it on my shelf and hope they don't see it. They're here, breaking down my door. I have to go. Xavier put down the journal and stared at Anne.
Bill Shadow is my dad's last name. He goes by William, though. That's too perfect to be coincidence. What did it say about the procedure?
Let's see. Flipping back a couple of pages, Xavier started to read again. July 23rd, 1870. I'm suspicious. I heard some people talking today about how I'll be dead by tomorrow. My old man's got a bunch of old strange books he picked up from the natives traveling here. The Redskins were babbling on about how the spells in it can make you live forever. My old man says it was a bunch of mumbo-jumbo, but he kept the books and gave them to me when he died. I started reading it to see what I can do, just in case I can live longer. I can't believe I believe this stuff. But a desperate man's got to do desperate things. It says I can make a vessel for my life that'll catch my soul after I die. After I be a ghost of sorts, still able to touch things. Only drawback is I can only go a mile away from the vessel. I'm gonna try it.
I wonder what the vessel thingy he used,
said Anne.
Me too. It also says the journal that the watch is the vessel. That means if we destroy it, he'll stop being a ghost. How will we destroy it?
Just go outside and throw it on the ground.
Let's do it.
Once outside, Xavier raised the watch above his head and threw it down as hard as he could upon the cement. The watch flew and hit the ground, but it didn't bounce, it didn't break, it didn't even so much as crack. It just landed on the ground as if it had been placed there, not hurtled. Xavier picked up the watch to inspect it.
Not even a scratch. This watch is tough. Anne, do you think we could go to your house and use your hammer? Sure, we even have a sledgehammer if we need it.
Sweet. Anne? He called to her.
Yes? I think this watch is enchanted with something. It should have broken when I threw it, but absorbed all the impact. There's a strange rune on the back of it, and it felt...
He struggled to find a meaning for it.
Powerful. We should try the sledgehammer anyway. Okay.
They arrived at Anne's house and slipped in through the side of the garage. Xavier grabbed a hammer and deftly twirled it between his fingers, grinning at Anne.
I can't wait to pay back that stupid ghost for killing my 2 best friends. It'll feel so good to do that to him.
He stepped back, swung the hammer as hard as he could right onto the smooth glass surface. There was a small clink and nothing else.
That was weird, said Xavier. I barely felt the impact. We should try the sledgehammer.
While Anne was grabbing it, Xavier examined the watch. He noticed a mystical symbol engraved onto the back of it. When he ran his thumb over it, a strange chill ran up his arm, standing there and tingling. Xavier hefted this heavy sledgehammer above his head, spun it, and slammed it onto the pocket watch. Just like last time, there was a clink. No cracks in the glass, no dented metal, just a small noise. Strange, said Xavier. It should have been broken. I've never heard of a watch that strong. It must be enchanted, like I said.
There has to be something in the journal about how to break the spell.
Xavier shook his head. That's all there was.
There has to be something.
She picked up the journal and started flipping through it. Xavier felt a cold sense of dread when he realized the truth.
Anne? I know there must be something about breaking the spell in the book from the Indians. Harvey Jones said he left it in his bookshelf in the manor.
No, Anne said, shaking her head. No, no, no.
We're going to have to go back in there, Anne. We can't go back, not after Rachel and Logan got killed last time.
Listen, Anne, Xavier said. We have two options here. We can go and kill the ghost and avenge our friends, which requires some courage, or we can go home, live our lives with our misunderstanding parents, and be left with guilt all our lives. Which one do you pick? Anne swallowed.
I'm really scared of the house and the ghost. It's all I can do not to cry every single second, but I don't want to live with that burden the rest of my life and miss my chance to make things right.
Does it mean you'll do it?
Yes, Anne nodded reluctantly. But let's go now while it's still light.
Anne and Xavier stepped into the mansion, watch in hand. The fading light cast a red hue on the pair, their shadows stretching down the hallway. The floor creaked beneath them as they walked down the hallway. They shivered, remembering just how just yesterday their friends were still alive and breathing, walking down the hall with them. Xavier decided to push it all off and focus on getting the job done. Anne, however, thought how Logan was protesting about coming and tears arising in the corners of her eyes. They took the stairs up to find Harvey's room. As they approached to turn around the corner, they smelled something awful. Xavier turned the corner and stopped. They saw Logan's body slumped against the wall, his two halves drooping on either side, painted red with his own blood. Anne retched, hobbled around the corner, and threw up. The acidic smell only added to the picture of horror in front of them. They edged around the corner, facing away from his body and holding their breaths. They found a second flight of stairs and worked their way up to the top noiselessly, lest they awaken the ghost. They reached the top and entered the place they had not been before. The floor was made of dark wood with red carpet unrolling the length of the hall before them. The walls were made of dark brown oak paneling and looked surprisingly well kept. It looked like the wood had been polished and swept, and the carpet had been vacuumed about 3 months ago. The wood was still retained some of its luster. This, obviously, was where the ghost had resided.
Uh-oh,
Anne said.
Remember how in the journal Harvey could not go more than a mile away from the pocket watch?
Yes?
Well, we brought the pocket watch with us away from the house, so that means his ghost was dragged along with us to the town. He was probably looking for us the whole time, but didn't find us, right? Oh my gosh, Anne, you're right, and we were in serious danger the whole time. That's not the worst part. When we left to go here, we brought along the pocket watch with us and dragged the ghost in a different direction. Oh, crap! We brought him back towards the house, so now he knows we're here and can reach us.
Then we'd better hurry. They raced off down the hall in pursuit of Harvey's bedroom. Turning the corner, they found a door with engraved lintel showing it was the ghost's room. Turning the handle carefully, they crept into the room and looked around in amazement. The room was a giant cavernous space with a giant four-poster bed in the center. There was a bathroom on the right and a walk-in shower and a toilet and a bidet next to it. On the far wall, there were 8 floor-to-ceiling shelves with books loaded to the sagging boards. The pair rushed to the bookshelves and searched frantically for the book. Xavier looked for the oldest-looking book, but that was a long, boring text title, Preparing to Meet the Thine Maker, which had discussion on every religion known to man. Anne went for the biggest book, but it was titled A Bad Moon on the Rise, an in-depth study of astronomy, which was boring as it sounds. They were searching for 10 minutes before Xavier found it. It was bound in a calfskin and crudely connected with bits of string. Xavier flipped it open and found only one section with artisan drawings and sketches on it. It was written in some Native American language, but there were translations in pencil between the lines. Suddenly, they heard a thump downstairs and an infuriated yell as they heard poundings working their way up to them. "Quick!" said Anne, urging Xavier on. Xavier found the page with a heading translated, "Breaking the Curse." "In order to break the curse, you must not be the one under it," read Xavier carefully. "To do this, you must recite these words perfectly while moving your left hand in the form of a cross." Xavier read the pronunciations as translated. "Un baka kido tu spiri oku." Then one must raise his right hand above his head and throw the soul vessel on the floor. Turn away, because an immensely bright light will shine forth, giving blindness to all those who should lay eyes on it. "The translation stops there," said Xavier.
"Well, what are we waiting for? Let's do it."
"Okay," said Xavier, raising his right hand and holding the watch over his head. "Un baka kido tu spiri aku," he chanted as he moved his right hand in a cross shape. He threw the watch on the ground and turned away quickly, expecting a bright light to flare up behind them. Nothing happened. The crashes and thumps were coming from right beneath them, signifying that the ghost was on the second floor, making his way up fast.
"You must not put enough spirit into it," yelled Anne over the noises. "Let me try."
Seizing the pocket watch, she repeated the procedure. Still, nothing happened. There was a bellow at the end of the hallway as the ghost saw his bedroom door ajar. The footsteps pounded faster as the ghost started sprinting down the hall. "Maybe we should do it together," screamed Xavier in panic. Anne nodded in agreement, and together they held up the pocket watch and bellowed the words in sync. Xavier poured all his fear, panic, desperation into the words, and all together they slammed the watch down and turned around. A blinding light flashed through the room, and for a few moments it was the best feeling he had ever felt. "We did it! We won! We vanquished him," he thought as he turned around. He and Anne walked out of the room, leaving the watch laying on the ground where they had thrown it. They rounded the corner and almost collided with Harvey Jones. He was kneeling on the floor, contorted in agony from trying to resist the pull of the spell. He flickered once, the see-through figure becoming nothing. Then he solidified. The ghost slowly stood up, flickered again, and opened its eyes.
"Run!"
Anne screamed as the ghost fumbled, trying to grab them. She and Xavier barged past the specter and ran for their lives. Anne rounded one turn, then the next, then barged into a room and slammed the door behind her. She said,
"We need to find a way out of here."
then looked around, expecting response. She was alone in the room.
"Crap, crap, crap,"
she said, pacing the floor. She must have lost Xavier on the turns. Where was he now? She had to go find him. She tried to open the door, but it was stuck. She pulled again and again, but it felt as if an invisible force was holding it shut. "Well, well, well," said a voice behind her. She spun around, her face turned white. There, hovering before her, was Harvey Jones. Blonde hair styled, boots on his feet, a murderous look in his eyes. He flickered 3 times, then stabilized.
Please don't kill me,"
stammered Anne, ready to pass out. "Oh, I assure you I will kill you. But I don't have time for fancy small talk. I gotta go kill that other shadow boy, too. I've been waiting to avenge my death for 172 years. I'm not gonna wait a second longer than I have to." Saying this, he plunged his hand into her chest with supernatural strength. He gripped her heart, wrenched it out, and squashed it like a ripe tomato. All Anne knew was agony. She had 3 seconds to see the ghost, who flickered in a spasm of pain, storming out of the room, looked at herself and see the blood pouring from her wound like a waterfall, and worry about Xavier. Before her vision went dark, she collapsed on the floor, dead. Meanwhile, Xavier tripped and fell after the first turn. He tried to call after Anne, but she was long gone by the time he opened his mouth. He rounded the next turn, found the stairs, and sprinted down onto the landing. He sprinted past Logan's body, down the next set of stairs, towards the front doors with the last strains of daylight seeping through. 50 feet, 25 feet, 15 feet, 10 feet. The door slammed shut. Cursing, Xavier slammed into the door and started frantically pulling at it, but it was no use. He ran to the nearest window to try to break it, but his fist stopped an inch away from the glass. He strained with all his might, but it felt like a brick wall had caught his fist and was not giving away. "I'll make this quick for you," said a southernly accented voice behind Xavier. He whirled around and stared straight into the barrel of a gun. He heard a click, a bang, and felt the strange sensation of his head exploding, and then he died. Harvey Jones dropped the gun and began convulsing. He fell onto the floor, writhing, flickered, and blinked out of existence. Anne opened her eyes. She was laying on Harvey's bedroom floor. How strange. She just had the strangest dream where she got killed by a ghost. She got up, stretched, and looked around. She saw Xavier lying on the ground next to the pocket watch. He opened his eyes, got up, looking confused. "What happened?" he asked. "I just had a nightmare where Harvey Jones shot me in the head at the front door. Why were you lying on the ground?"
I had a weird dream too, said Anne. I guess something about that blast of light knocked us out.
"I guess so," said Xavier. "But hey, we just crushed that ritual. High five!" Anne went to high five him, but she missed. The funny thing was, it looked like she hit his hand, or at least grazed it, but it didn't even feel like the wind of the hand go by. It was almost as if...
Sorry,
Anne said, trying again, slower this time. There was no doubt about it. Anne's hand went straight through Xavier's, and she gasped, "I can't touch you!" She tried to punch his shoulder, but it looked as if her hand was absorbed into it. "Follow me, I have a hunch." She led Xavier out the room and into the hall. She turned the corner and Xavier followed her, feeling strangely light. He rounded 2 more corners and walked into the side room where a grisly and confusing sight met his eyes. On the ground lay Anne's body, still bleeding, with her heart on the floor. Anne walked over to her body and stared down at it.
Yep, just like I expected. The spell book thingy said that beyond translation that the person who expelled the ghost would transfer their soul into the vessel. But since there were 2 people to do it, we both got transferred into it.
"No," said Xavier. "No, no, 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 no." He ran down the stairs to the front door and saw his body flat on the floor and opened the door. He sprinted down the lawn, straight to the direction of the town. He got to the point where he could just see the town, and he didn't see any more of it. He ran and ran, but his feet went in the grass and never brought him 1 inch farther because he had reached the 1-mile radius. "No!" He screamed and fell onto his knees in despair. He thought about the life he lost. He thought about his family and friends and how he would never see them again. It would just be him and Anne, just him and Anne, just him and Anne. The night air filled with the sound of Xavier's screams. The end. Hey, if you made it in this far in the video, thanks for watching. Please check out other videos like Who Drank the Milk, Theme of the Titanium Skull. Remember to tell your friends about me. I think they'll enjoy it. But also remember, keep those titanium skulls polished, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.